Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of The Complete Advisor. So happy that you are here joining us. We're going to talk about a super, super important topic. I'll introduce my guest here in just one second, but for everybody that works with a client, whether you're an insurance agent, whether you are an IAR, whether you have your own RIA firm, or you're a registered rep and you're doing assets under management, you're with a broker-dealer, every single one of us has to make sure that we are staying compliant with whatever regulatory body we have to answer to. And there are common mistakes that people make that get them in trouble. There are common things that you could be doing right that people just tend to miss, that if a regulatory person came into your office and said, hey, we want to take a look under the hood, you want to have your house in order. So we are joined today by Lance Monk. Lance, I'm going to talk your bona fides here for just a second.
Right.
But so Lance Monk is, he works at a broker-dealer. We won't even have to say the broker-dealer name. We'll keep it. We'll give you anonymity. That's what I'm trying to say. But so you are an expert at this, really. And what I mean by that is not only are you working with clients as an advisor,
yes, you
are also working for the broker-dealer in is compliance the right category to put you in?
It is.
Okay, so compliance. And one of your job functions is, as we'll flesh out here in a second, is working with other advisors to make sure that their house is in order.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Lance Monk, it is great to have you here, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Now, so one of the first things, let's dispel this myth right off the bat, because I do like to tease a little bit. Some people say that compliance is a department of no. Mm-hmm. And that's not true. That's not necessarily true. It is the department of making sure that your practice individually is in practice tomorrow, because you're making sure you're hitting the right deals. So let's talk about, now you go out and you audit offices. Well, talk a little bit about your job function.
So what I do is there's a number of things. Obviously, I'm that, but I'm not an expert. I have to stop you right there.
Look at that. There's compliance right in the room.
Compliance right off the bat. Yeah.
Now that almost makes you an expert because you corrected it. That humble brag there. But keep going. Okay, so keep going. So not an expert. Yes. Asterisk.
I'm a supervisor. I'm an advisor as well, but I also supervise and do compliance audits and take care of other compliance functions as well, but mostly doing the audits.
Okay, so what we're gonna talk about, and those audits, I want to back up, because with audits, the first thing you think of is somebody did something. Mm-hmm. Somebody's in trouble. And that's not the way it is, right?
Broker-dealer firms are required by FINRA to audit every one of their offices at least every 3 years, and there's some indication that sometimes you will have to do them more often.
Sure.
But whether they're doing everything correctly as far as you see it, you have to go see every office at least every 3 years.
And the purpose of that audit, if you have kids or if you were a kid, which would be everybody, right? Yes. When your parents came in and they wanted to check to make sure your room was clean, it's not necessarily that they thought you were didn't clean your room.
Exactly.
They just wanted to make sure that it was done right?
Trust and verify.
That's right. Trust and verify. So we're going to run through, and I've got things in front of me here, but we're going to talk about maybe some of the mistakes that you've seen advisors make. Again, we're not putting you, if you listen to this podcast, this episode, and you do everything Lance says, that doesn't mean that you still, we're not going to cover everything. Exactly. We're just going to cover some of the big ones, maybe some of the glaring ones. But I want to talk about maybe some mistakes you've seen, how to avoid them for those people listening. And then I've got some questions. So,
sure.
And again, if you are registered for securities in some form or fashion, you're going to get an audit at some point.
At some point, yes.
And if you're not registered in your insurance only, you know what? There's a chance that you might have the insurance department want to ask you some questions.
Very good chance.
And my take is that if you have your house in order, one, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier if someone says, "Let me see the McGillicuddy file," and you're like, "Right here it is."
Exactly.
And then I also believe that if you went into somebody's office and you looked and everything was organized and you had questions in your mind, as a regulator, not you, but as a regulator, you might be thinking, "Oh, this is all squared away. This is going to be a piece of cake, because I can tell just by looking at him, this is methodical." So I mean, it changes the frame of mind. You go into someone's office and it's a mess. You're like, okay, clearly this guy, there's going to be problems, because he can't even put his papers away.
Exactly.
So maybe that's not true. maybe, but I think that kind of lends you to think, if it's blood in the water, if you will, if you're a
Exactly.
regulator. Okay, so let's talk about, Lance, where should we start? What would be maybe the most common pitfall that you see from a financial advisor? Top of your head.
Just not following up with, keeping up to date with what the current compliance and the current regulatory environment is. What are they looking for? Where's their key point of emphasis for this year? They send out notices on that generally to a broker-dealer or to the advisors directly.
That sounds a little bit like if you're a sports fan, when they, early in the season and they say this year's point of emphasis is, holding on the receivers.
That.
So we were talking off mic about the fact that in your case, since you're with a broker-dealer, FINRA will put out maybe their areas of emphasis, things. They'll say, hey, broker-dealers, this is what we've been seeing.
Yes.
This is something we need to make sure you're handling. Handle it,
Exactly.
And then that's where you come into.
And then we pass that on to the reps.
Yep.
And we make that a point emphasis of our internal audits to make sure if that's what they're looking for, that's what we're going to look for. Because the whole point of our audits is to make sure you're covered, you're doing things correctly, and you're ready for a FINRA or any other audit.
Yep. If someone comes in the house, it's in order. Now, so you were telling me so these rules, these areas of emphasis, and is that the right way to? Is that how they call it? Okay. So these areas of emphasis comes out. It gets communicated out, and even if you're not registered, again, you can see the parallels in the DOL fiduciary rule, conversations around best interest, different things like that are out there. But sticking your head in the sand, and like if you run into something and saying, "Well, I didn't know,"
it doesn't matter.
That doesn't work.
Well, and again, speaking from the broker-dealer standpoint, we make sure our people know.
Sure.
Hopefully they do. That's one of the problems with being a smaller, independent, not broker-dealer, but an independent RIA, is you may not have all of the access or pay attention to the access that you have as to what's going on.
It could just, honestly,
You're too busy with your clients to do the back end of it.
Yeah, you got your clients, you've got to do marketing, you've got probably, if you're a small RIA, you probably got your HR issues because Becky said something to Steve, and Steve's feelings were hurt, and then you've got all these communications coming in that you have to make sure you're hitting all the files. That's a big one to swallow. Okay, so not being compliant, not staying up to date, there's no that doesn't fly with the auditors. What about let's start with documentation and record keeping. So what type of documentation should an advisor make sure that they have ready to go?
There's a number of things. If we're talking about what the emphasis has been lately, it's client communication has always been a huge sticking point. It has been since I've been in the business for 30 years. It's always one. You have to, as a broker-dealer and a FINRA rep, you must keep every written communication with the client. That now includes social media that it didn't used to when I was starting in the business. It now includes texting that it didn't include. It's always taken handwritten notes, not Christmas cards as such, but any handwritten note from a client, a letter sent from a client, everything like that, emails, but most folks use their broker-dealer or their record keepers email, so it's kept.
So how does that, is that text messages?
It's illegal. I mean, it's wrong. You're not allowed to text message unless you have a method of capturing every one that goes to a client. We have I'm not going to use the name of the company, but there are firms out there that will make sure they capture your text, and you have to pay an extra fee for it. But
is it something along the lines of so it captures? I don't want to get into the tech weeds there.
Yeah, for the simple thing, it's like an Outlook that we have Outlook for our email. Outlook captures all of our emails.
Yeah.
If it were a text message, we have a company like that handles all of that and keeps it.
That's got to be a tricky little thing because everyone texts. I mean, heck, half the time people don't answer their phone. They just, look at it first.
Yep. And people, and it's one of those things that you're not intentionally doing anything wrong. You're not passing top secret information, client secret information. You're just saying, hey, your accounts look good. Or the client, most importantly, the client texts you if you offer out your cell phone to your clients, they text you and go, hey, how are my accounts doing? That is client communication. Doesn't seem like much. It's very innocuous. Hey, what time is my appointment? Very innocuous. But
Boy, it gets, the first one I can see, the second one I'm like, wait, really?
And most people, that is a response that I get every time I go into an office is really, if they're just verifying their appointment, I said, did you communicate with the client? It is absolutely that simple and that difficult, if it were.
So with that, with the texting, with collecting the data of texting, this is the first thing that pops in my head. Would that software then catch, if I'm a rep, does that catch when I send something to my wife?
Yes, if you have it. And it's a complicated thing.
Sure.
And that's why we say best off, don't text.
That's a tough one, though.
It is. And you can get a secondary number. You can get a business text, and the app we use does that. It gives you a separate number that connects with your other number. Again, I'm not even qualified.
Not a tech guy, not a tech. But you have it's having a separate, just like you have a separate line for your business, have a separate
and just like you have a separate email, you have a Yahoo account.
Sure.
Which, again, comes into the same thing. If you accidentally are in your Yahoo or they send something to your Yahoo email, you must somehow get that to your captured email.
Yeah. Golly, that one. How much time do you spend in conversations around text?
Most. That is, if there is a problem, that's generally it. Yes, I mean, because again, I have a client that's my cousin is one of my smartest people I know, but she cannot grasp the concept of don't text me about business.
Yeah.
We can be talking about going to the condo next weekend, getting together and doing this. Oh, by the way, how are my accounts? I saw it was up today.
Yeah.
I now have to take all of that conversation and capture it.
How do you do that? Just getting into the weeds, but screenshots? Like, what do you do after the fact? If she's
just forward my text to my email, to my business email.
Gotcha. So that would be a big one. And then I'm just thinking, in my family, we have a family WhatsApp, and then
and that's very secretive and not kept in a sense. That isn't that. I mean, I don't use that personally, but.
They say it's
the point of it
is
it's encrypted and it disappears as soon as it's sent, et cetera, or whatever.
Yeah.
Then that's a problem.
What about like on Facebook? Yeah, with Facebook DMs or Facebook messages,
Instant Messenger,
text, not text,
anything,
Twitter, whatever Twitter's called now.
Any of that. Social media has been a great thing for most people. It's been a horrible thing, honestly, for our business. For reps. Yeah. Because of those things that you just don't think about. These are reps that are good reps. They're not doing anything intentionally wrong. They're not sending out the client's Social Security number. They're not doing things that are clearly wrong. But wrong is wrong, no matter if it's intentional or not. Yeah.
Well, that harkens back to what we're talking about. If you don't. Well, I didn't know I couldn't. That's not going to fly.
It is not even going to fly.
Yeah. So let's talk about communication. So communication with clients. What about communications if you do get into an audit? Can you give some tips for what advisors should keep in mind when they're talking to with auditors? Say I don't know if we mentioned it when we turned the mic on, but I mean you said you had an audit at one point.
Yes, I have.
Should we be nice to the auditors or?
My personal I was not. You don't want to be adversarial because it's kind of like getting a ticket from a highway patrolman.
Yeah,
you're not gonna win that one.
Yeah,
they have the badge and the gun, and you're not gonna win. So the best thing you can do is throw yourself on the sword. Here's where I'm trying to do everything right. Can you help me make sure I'm doing things right? And then maybe they won't beat you to death when they find the thing wrong. That they'll accept it as it was a mistake and we'll correct it and whatever administrative punishment there may be, and move on.
Now, do they show up wearing all black or do they?
No.
Not like Darth Vader or anything
it's
like
not
that?
And it was scary until they walked in the door. Well, mine was.
I bet. It
turned into actually surprisingly a very enjoyable experience and a good experience for me. Since I was becoming an internal auditor, it was eye-opening for me and helped me tremendously in how I deal with our reps. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's see, lemons, lemonades out
Absolutely.
of lemon. But I know what you mean. Like I got a letter once from you get a letter and it's from the IRS. You're like, your heart pauses for a second, and you open up. It's like, oh, okay, that's not so bad. So let's talk about record keeping, because that's a huge area, right? And I'm always amazed, still at this time in 2024, every now and then when I run into somebody that doesn't have a CRM, doesn't have, just has terrible record keeping. And I know, I can see the, what are you talking about? There are guys that are out there that are independent that are, they're a little old school. So what do you see as far as in record keeping? So we talked about documentation of communications, but what are there, any areas that you see kind of some common mistakes in that area?
Well, the main thing we have is, and again, it's our system, is you must keep a record of all trades you do.
Yep.
Be it a check coming in, moving money around within mutual funds or whatever else. You have to keep a record of some sort of all of your transactions. The home office keeps them as well, but we don't have access to the times you meet with your client and you don't do anything. Okay, everything's great just the way it is. We're not going to touch it. The market hadn't dropped 1,000 points like it did yesterday, and so we're going to just status quo. Everything's good. That is mistakenly thought of as no trade.
Because that's a recommendation, though.
That is absolutely a trade and a recommendation that you hold everything, and it must be accounted for. And as a broker-dealer, we can account for that because we don't know your schedule and when you met with them. We need you to have a record because we're going to get asked.
Yeah, I think anybody. So in our world, on this side of the fence, one of the things that our sales teams do is they have a database, and one of the things you do is you note conversations, and you have to write out, and sometimes you've got people that are maybe not as verbose, or maybe they're a little too efficient in their words.
Yes.
And my take on that is always, with my own memory, if it comes into a he said, she said situation, especially with a client, not even with an auditor, but with a client, and the client says, well, you said this, and I would say, well, no, I didn't say that. I'm not going to remember personally, but if I have notes and I could say, no, Lance, actually we talked at 4:00 on the 15th of July, and you wanted to do this, and I recommended blah, 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 but you wanted to, and that's why I had you sign that form.
That's exactly right. And because you make the mistake, I've done it. Again, being a rep also gives me a unique insight, is I think I'm perfect and remember everything. And so I know I told you not to invest in NVIDIA,
Sure,
whatever it may be, when you're retired and only have $2,000 to your name, and I put that whole $2,000 in NVIDIA, and it's gone tomorrow. I'm just pulling stuff out of the sky.
Gotcha.
But then
sounded like a recommendation to me, but whatever.
But if I made that recommendation
Sure.
and it went south, just the fact that I told you, and even if I am correct and do remember correctly, proof. You must have proof.
Yep.
It is. I constantly tell people there is not a chance that you can have too much written down and verified.
Yeah.
You cannot have enough backup for what you do.
Yeah. Do you see advisors when you're out? Do you see guys and gals using things like when I was in practice, we used it was called Dragon Talk, but it was a vendor that you could call in. It was they would transcribe your notes, and all you do is just talk. And what I liked about it is sometimes when you're typing, I don't know, you just start getting tired of typing because you're like, this is taking forever. But if I can just stream of conscious and just talk, I was sitting in there with Lance, and we talked about this, and his kid just did baseball, blah, 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 and we talked about, and then you get that back, and then being able to, is that a good practice or no?
I don't know if, you mean videoing or?
No, just if you would,
recording it?
This software was almost like Siri. You would call in, you would verbalize your notes, and then they would send it back to you. They would just transcribe.
And you can do that. That's just transcribing.
Yes.
I was talking about at live as it was going on. You'd have the issue
that'd be
privacy and recording things. But
Look
But
at you, always
if
the
you
compliance
could, it would be
officer.
great. I mean, honestly, if you could and you're doing things right. And again, I look at this from a perspective of reps that are doing things right, but don't document, because that's again, no answer. The fact that you are doing everything right but don't document it is still not good.
Do you see that with, I would wonder, so I'm going to make a broad generalization. Do you see that maybe with advisors that are a little more worldly experienced, that maybe they became an advisor later, and so they're used to doing things their own way, or is it
Not really. It's
not really?
It's across the board. Everyone thinks, and again, it's the ones that are doing things correctly and doing things to the best of their ability and not making wild recommendations. They tend to think that, okay, I'm doing the best for the rep. I'm doing the best for the client. I don't need to make notes. I don't need to have documentation because I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. That's one of the things, on here when I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about the advisors that I know, whether they're with your broker-dealer or people that are with other broker-dealers that I run into, I don't see the... we don't have the guys and gals that are like stock jockeys. They're more long-term planners, more, they're not.
That's a function of where you work, honestly.
Yeah.
Those guys are going to be in your A.G. Edwards, your Merrill Lynch's, and all of that. There's not a whole lot of independent stock traders.
Yeah.
There are some.
Exhausting.
It is.
And
I wouldn't do it. But.
No. So really, the big things that you probably see are, those mistakes and things that people really need to stay on top of, are making sure you're documenting correctly.
Absolutely.
That texting thing's got to be.
It's actually scary. Texting and social media has made supervision and compliance a nightmare.
Yeah, that's almost one where.
Because it's unconscious. You do it with, again, the texting. I've got family members that are clients. Just because they're family members and clients doesn't mean I can bypass everything.
Exactly.
They still have to be captured.
It's going to be interesting to see that area from the regulator perspective, because it's like the regulations almost have to catch up with what's happening in the real world.
It is.
The rules that are being, this is my 2 cents, and this is my opinion only, of course, but
sure.
It's almost like the rules are, it's like the rules are written a decade or 2
years ago.
Yeah, they're not prepared to handle what's actually happening.
They are catching up, but slowly, and it's a matter of catching up by catching folks doing things wrong.
Yeah. A question that I always get, I'm just curious, this is just a curiosity question. So being registered, I take my annual stuff and do all those questions. Right. And the one that always pops in there is I'm doing the attestation where the disclosing of customer complaints.
Yes.
Do you run across that where someone's trying to sweep something under the rug all the time? Because there's got to be that. There's
the oral and written. It's kind of hard if it's written. You
have to.
You kind of have to. Well, you have to do it on all of them.
Right.
But you can think you can get away with an oral one. Somebody just calls and complains that I don't think you're doing the best for me. They're not very specific. They're not saying you cost them money. They didn't say you made a bad investment. They're just saying, I don't think you're earning your fee. I don't think you're whatever. You should always pass it up the chain to make sure that is not a complaint that needs to be reported. They all need to be reported from the rep to management and to supervision.
That's one right there. I could see where that one could bite you in the backside, because if somebody called in and was griping, where does that gripe go up?
Where does the gripe turn into a complaint?
Yeah, and that's where having somebody to reach out to.
About the only thing you can write off, and I hate to even say that always, because you never say always and never say never, but majority of the time if they're complaining about the market, that's not a complaint. Well, it is a complaint. We all have to complain about the market, especially after some of the weeks we've had.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're investing in the market and they wanted to invest in the market and the market's not doing good is not a complaint to you.
Yeah.
Now, if it came to why am I in the stock market, I didn't want to be in the stock market, I didn't want to lose money, that's when you have to push it up, and then you have to back up. Yes, you did want to be in the market. Here's your disclosures. Here's everything we talked about. That's why you have the backup.
That's interesting. Well, and that is the beauty of having a compliance officer to bounce these things off of too. So I imagine you get probably a lot of phone calls from guys and gals asking like, hey Lance, do I need to blank? And then you can keep them into good graces.
I try my best.
So we're not going to name names. We're not going to point fingers at anybody.
Sure.
But what are some of the other, what hadn't we hit that are common mistakes that you see? It's big or small, but things that you have to help advise people to correct on.
Well, really not that much. Those are honestly the biggest of the big. And it's actually encompasses more than we've talked about. When you think record keeping, do I have every disclosure? Well, a lot of times you can't. The business doesn't finish if you don't have the correct disclosures. You don't complete the business. But if you have, keeping your meeting notes, keeping what you've told the clients, keeping trades, keeping emails, client communications, that's really all of the biggest ones we see. And again, we're now assuming people are doing things right.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't.
I say if somebody's been in business more than a couple of years, they have to have the right intentions, because if you're dancing in the gray area, you get bit. You come down sooner or later.
Eventually.
You would think. That's my rosy view. Don't wreck my worldview. So has it made it easier, do you think, for advisors, for everybody, with keeping things electronically? Does that make life easier, or do you think that makes it more challenging?
In a sense, it makes it more challenging because, it is obviously easier than writing all of your notes and keeping everything in paper. The only thing about the bad thing about the electronics is you kind of assume sometimes that things were captured, that you did, and it's kept in the right place, because it has to be accessible to your broker-dealer and to FINRA.
I think that's always, for me, I was just working on something today, and I was thinking like, well, maybe I should just print those out, and because then I can just reach over and grab it instead of having to look through a file and then open each PDF looking for what I'm looking for. Maybe I'm just not. Maybe there's a better way.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Where did you put that?
Yes. Where did you put that? Yes, if you didn't title it right.
Which file folder, and if you have 800 clients or whatever it may be, and you have a ton of folders inside of your system, where did I put it? Can I put my hand on it when I need it?
Yeah,
If the client complaint comes, can I find all of the documentation? If it's a paper file, that's easy if you've done your work. But if you've put it on the computer somewhere or in a file system somewhere, where is it? How can I find it?
Yeah, then that comes down to how good of a filer are you, and how good are you on your process?
Absolutely.
You know what I didn't ask about, since you just mentioned it. Do you see a lot of situations as you're doing when you're doing office visits and audits and such, where you have to talk to the advisor about their staff?
Oh yeah. Are they letting information slip? Are they discussing things with clients that they may not should be able to or should not be talking about with a client? Does someone that's not registered make a recommendation or something, or make an opinion even, as it were? But if they're in that office, it can be taken as a recommendation.
That can be trouble.
Absolutely. And are they filing things the correct way? Are they putting things where they're supposed to be?
Now, I have a question for you. How hard does the book get thrown at somebody if, and then this is just your personal opinion, based upon your experience though, but if somebody comes in and you tell them like, hey, you need to do blank, blank, and blank, and then the next time you visit, the next time you visit them, they haven't done those things,
the warning gets much sterner. And again, it depends on what it is, obviously.
Sure.
If it's a serious offense, number one, we've told them the first time, this is the one and only chance you get on this, because this is extremely important. If it's things that are getting overlooked, not intentional, and just you've got to do a better job of this, they'll get the first one, maybe the second, and the second will come with some form of punishment again, you got to reinforce why you making them do it.
Yeah.
It could be anything from a cash or a bonus or whatever, any number of things, or heightened regulation. We can also always put heightened supervision on you, that we're going to want to see everything you do.
Yeah.
We can do that. Don't want to, because it obviously adds more work to us. But.
Yeah. It's and I would just imagine from an organizational standpoint, if you've got one gal going rogue over here,
Yes.
it's going to make the regulatory bodies think like, well, wait a second, you've got the Wild West over here, so what the heck is going on with the other 99% of those producers? Maybe we should take a look at that firm overall.
And they absolutely will.
Yeah.
And we hope that's not going to happen. That's why we will punish and do whatever remediation needs to be done if they're not following what we tell them to do.
Yeah.
It is extremely important that they do what we tell them to do.
And I think, do you think most people that are registered know that? I'm sure they're aware that the public can go and pull up their FINRA.
Sure.
They go on FINRA and pull up their broker thing.
FINRA.org, my rep.
Yep.
It's on there.
Yep.
Broker check. It's a thing.
I have seen some crazy. I was doing a project once, and I've seen some crazy things that.
It is amazing that some people are still in the business. I will tell you.
Yes. I saw a guy that even disclosed that he was like maybe 15 or 16, and he had shoplifted a belt in like 1965.
That's a little too much knowledge.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, I've seen some things. What about? Have we missed anything, Lance? If you could speak, so you're speaking to advisors not only of the broker dealer that you're with, but then also just in financial professionals across the board. Your opportunity, you've got the bully pulpit.
Find a broker dealer and find someone that is very proactive with their supervision. Again, as being a rep first, and it was very unique how I got into being a supervisor, because I was one of the guys that didn't try to get over, I wouldn't say. I always felt like I'm honest and have integrity to do what's right for my clients, but was not always the best with paperwork, the things that we've just talked about.
Yeah.
I was the guy that I can remember that I told that client that. Well, if a discussion comes up, and it fortunately, knock on wood, has not, I have the documentation. The fact that I know it, and even the fact that I write it down. Sometimes, if it's important, you write it down and get a signature. Because you can write all you want. I met with the client, told him all this stuff, and the client says, no, you didn't. Well, I wrote down that I did. Then that's where arbitration comes in.
Yeah.
Who do they believe?
I think I'm going to start this practice in my own house. I'll be like, you told me that I didn't have to unload the dishwasher.
There you go.
Can you sign right here?
There you go. In our case, unfortunately, it's one of those things that seems silly, and in practice, it probably is silly. But again, you cannot have enough documentation in your practice. That is the one thing I would tell every advisor out there. Always document until you're sick of it.
All right, let's, before we're getting ready to land this plane.
Right.
Let's put on your Punxsutawney Phil hat here. What do you see? What do you think? We're not going to hold you to this, of course, but what do you see as maybe some of the big, as you look at the state of the industry, AI, the way the markets are going, social media, all these different things. What do you see as maybe the biggest concerns that you can think of, or the biggest challenges in maybe the next 5 years?
Probably AI is going to be huge, because people are going to start relying on that to help them with their investments, and where does the information come from, how reliable is it? Those kind of things are going to be difficult now, not necessarily from a regulatory standpoint, but from an advisor standpoint. How much do you trust alternative intelligence?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's a big one, because you can pull things up and you're like, they talk about AI hallucinations and where it's just making things up. I read the case where a lawyer was used it to write a brief, and it literally just made up precedents and fake deals. That is the rub. And then what I think of on that one too is any information that you put in there, if you're using it to do any kind of analysis, That's not secure.
It's not. And whose information do you put in? How much information that can be related back to an individual do you put in?
Yeah.
That's a big problem because that's not containable.
And once it's out there, it's out there.
Absolutely.
I think the one that was going to come up besides AI, I think like the texting has got to be like playing whack-a-mole.
Social media and texting has been for 5-6 years now, since it became a thing, honestly. And then it took a few years for us to realize that we were missing communications with the public. Somebody accidentally said, "Hey, this guy texted me." I'm sure it's where we go, "Oh, wait, we were supposed to have that." And so, but now it is a big push, and it has been for the last 5 years that I know of, been a huge push. And again, it's because it's something that you're not doing intentionally. Very few times is it someone giving, "Here, I'm going to text you your statement and your Social Security number." Most people, knock on wood, are smarter than that to not do that. But, you do it instinctively. I'm texting about something else. Oh, by the way.
Yeah.
Then.
Another one that if I was going to throw one out there, that with all the data breaches, it's almost like doggone what actually is in 10 years, what is going to actually be secure, because
very true. And that is a big thing. That's something I did not think of. Thank you for bringing that up. Is saving, where we have been a big push to make things electronic.
Yeah.
Right or wrong. We honestly tell our people we want you to keep paperless because paper can get away from you. However, then when you go to the electronic, how do you store it and who captures and how is it captured and how is it secured? You don't want it on your laptop. You don't want it on your desktop. You want it in a secure cloud server that someone else takes the security away from you. Because if it's on your laptop, if you're typing on your laptop, not saving it into a cloud or a secure server,
something happens.
It's on your hard drive. Doesn't take a wizard to take your laptop, pull the hard drive out of it, and put it in their laptop. They then have all of your client information.
And often gone. There's so many ways. I heard some. I just came.
These are just funny things that actually the FINRA trip, the FINRA guy that came to my office. Those were the things that I thought were just ridiculous. I'm like, why can't I save this on my computer? And he's pointed out this guy can walk in and bust your window, and before police can get here, he can have that computer tower, laptop, whatever you're using. And be in the next county before the cops can get here. And then it doesn't take, again, a computer genius to open it up. You don't have to be able to turn your computer on. You can have all the passwords, safety locks, unless your hard drive is encrypted, which most just general public are not going to have encrypted hard drives. They can take your hard drive out, put it in their computer.
And often gone.
And Bob's your uncle. There's all your client information in their hands.
Yep. That stuff, that's scary. I just came through an airport and I'd listened to a security thing, and this consultant, and they were talking, and he said, like, if you use the Wi-Fi at the public Wi-Fi, the guy said his analogy was that would be like picking up a toothbrush off the floor and putting it in your mouth. Like that's how. That's a gross analogy.
But you do have to think that way, and the funniest thing about this whole thing, my wife is in the legal profession, and she's makes jokes, and so do some of the reps that I go to see, that I have now become and sound like a criminal because I have to think of everything that someone could do that's wrong. And it's a very jaded thing. You have to take it and make light of it as best you can. Because you can turn the wrong way pretty quick, thinking of, having to think like a crook. You have to think like one to catch one. And you have to think of everything they can do wrong to see if they're doing it.
That's right.
It's unfortunate. Then I have to go home and laugh and find something to get my mind off of that, because I don't like thinking that way, but it's happened.
Yeah.
And when you've seen it happen, I've seen Ponzi schemes. We had a guy in our local area did that. Took all of his people's money, and I sat across the table, just like me and you right now, from him for 8 years at Rotary. And next thing I know, he's in jail. And never would have thought it. So you just have to find, all right, and here's what he did. Now I have to think that every one of my reps could do that.
Yeah.
And I have to find out how do I not let them do that.
How do you protect the firm? How do you protect the clients?
Most importantly, the clients first, obviously, but then you've got to protect your broker-dealer and your reps. Unfortunately, they're last, but it's because they're the ones that are doing it. They have to be thought of last. Because they have the control to fix it.
That's crazy. We're going to have now. I would have loved to. Now this maybe next time you're back, we'll do the like the witness where we hide your identity, and you could go through the 10 dumbest things you've ever seen.
That'll take a while.
I'd love to. We'd love to hear, but we won't because that would be maybe a list.
We'll have to definitely put it behind the screen and change my voice.
Okay, so I think some of the key things. If I were to sum up our conversation, I would say that one. Remember that no matter where you're at, compliance is not out to get you. Compliance is there to keep you in business and make sure that you're doing things right. Two, man, you got to be documenting. And you got to pay attention to what's going on regulatory-wise because ignorance is not going to protect you if you forgot to do something.
It may be bliss, but it's not. It's not an answer.
That's right. And you know what? If you're texting your clients, you better stop. You better be doing that thing the right way.
You better either be capturing it or stop.
And I just have to imagine that's going to be a continual point of emphasis.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
Like I said, for the last 5 years, it's been a constant battle.
Yep.
But I wasn't really doing it intentionally, or I didn't really say anything. All I said was our meeting is this day.
Yep.
That's communication.
Portfolio looks good. Yeah.
Yep.
All trouble.
Simple, off-the-cuff things that if they wanted to, they could ding you for it. And the most important thing is, the last fine I saw for someone that did it a couple of times was $25,000.
To the advisor?
To the advisor.
Woof.
So, and the firm was more, by the way.
That doesn't make for a happy firm. That makes for a U5?
It does make for a U5.
Probably. But the key thing there is you could text, you just have to do it the right way.
The right way.
And that's the key thing. That's
it is.
the key
And
thing.
most everything you can do if you do it right.
Yep. You just got to do it the right way, and it might take a half step more, but that's the right way to keep you in practice.
And us by nature don't want to do that extra step.
I know. All right. Well, I tell you what, we're gonna wrap her right there. So Lance, thank you for being on the podcast. We appreciate it. For everybody else, don't forget, if you get a chance, follow, subscribe. That way you're in the know. Anytime we drop an episode, you get notified right away. If you get a chance, I will tell you, if you get a chance, drop a comment in. Let me know what you think. Maybe a topic you want to hear, constructive criticism in general. I'm a big boy. I can take it. That'd be fun. But at any rate, thanks so much. We'll see you on the next episode.